Hello, everyone. Welcome
Hello,
to
hello.
the April 11th, 11/11. So 4/11 at 11 a.m. Pacific time. And so glad you're here. We come here every month on the 11th of the month at 11 a.m. to talk about what it means to live our values because I certainly am finding in my own life how important it is for me to have that anchor, that guidance, that inner compass to help direct where I want to go and how am I going to get there. And this is a place that we know, and I know every month we can come to and have these conversations. And sometimes they're not always simple or easy, but they're usually dynamic. And I usually walk away, I think others too, with a shift in perception, which in my mind is the definition of a miracle. So
Uh-huh. I
when
like
you
that.
shift your perception of something, I didn't make that up. I heard that from Marianne Williamson, who it's part of like the Course in Miracles, but a shift in perception is defined as a miracle. And I really have found that in my own life. So today we are going to talk about our values and the earth and sustainability and what that means to all of us. It is Earth Month, and if you're like, I have noticed so much out there about the planet, what everyone's doing to help the climate crisis, address it, all those kinds of things. And I certainly believe that every day is Earth Day. I'm glad that we've moved from one day to an entire month, but I think that has a lot to do with magazines needing to have an entire, Vogue has Earth Month and Sexual Digest has Earth. Everyone has a month of to celebrate the Earth, which is great. But my personal belief only is that every day is Earth Day. But what I thought would be really interesting, I want to say again what core values are, and then before I get too far into this, I wanted to say hi to everyone. I'm off and running. My brain likes to go. So, hi everyone. Again, I want to say hi to Sheila, who's here with me, co-facilitating.
Hi, Amy. So glad to be here. We were just talking offline about how exciting this topic is, just how much it
Yeah,
near and dear to my heart it is. So this is
yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah, and I was racing to get in it. I do love a good conversation. I yearn for those deep conversations. And also, Anne, I want to say hi and welcome. I still want to call you Anna, but I will call you Anne.
Please, please,
Which would you prefer?
Anna is from you. Yeah,
Okay, good.
my friends call me that. Thank you.
Okay, good. Um, so we're here, and I'm really glad to be here. And I myself need to get a little bit settled because I can get kind of excited and off and running with this topic and my own excitement about it. And inspiration, because inspiration is energizing. And that was the topic. What does it mean to have inspired living? And what does it mean to be inspired? How do we get inspired? So, what are our core values and why does that even matter, have anything to do with inspiration? So, core values are how I have defined them, and it works in this framework, is they are single words or short phrases that absolutely connect you to yourself, to that highest version of yourself, that part of you that is like, yes, this is me. I am here, and that feels good. These are about being you in your kind of divine capital S self, highest version of you. Not something that you have to live up to, not an expectation, none of those. There's no shoulds in values. It is actually about you defining for yourself what that means. And then they help point you in that direction. I see them as a bridge. They're a bridge in a world where we need bridges, and sadly, quite painfully, bridges are falling down, crashing down. But we need bridges more, and they bridge us from helping us be ourselves out in the world. Like, how do I show up as me? Okay, that's great if that's what I want to be and how I want to show up, but how do I do that? What is the practical aspect? How do I make this tangible so that I actually show up in alignment with my values rather than just talk about it? So in one way, they're the bridge to help us do that. At the same time, if we find ourselves out in the world, working at a job, doing on on a trip, doing things in the world as a parent or a friend, any kind of situation, really, a neighbor, how do I connect back to myself if I can get lost in that? If I'm lost in a mall, even, shopping, or Amazon, just getting carried away in the I have to have it now mentality, how do I come back to myself and find myself within that? So they're the bridge in both ways. They bridge us to help bring us out to the world so you can share your gifts with others, and they help us return to ourselves when we can get caught up in kind of the craziness of the world around us. And so that is what they are. And so where the inspiration comes is because they are that highest version of ourselves, the things that define us in this way, or one way that we're defined, they help us, they gear us towards what inspires us, what lights us up. And so they can help clue us into that in ways. And for me, I absolutely have nature embedded in one of my values, which has recently actually changed. I know, Sheila, you do. And I know we're going to be talking about where it falls into you, but I imagine that from knowing you and how you grow up, that it's in there too, in an aspect of a way. And even if it's not literally nature, when we talk about well-being, or we talk about health, or we talk about community, nature is a part of all of those things. So even if your actual value isn't nature or something specifically to do with sustainability, it's embedded in that. And I think what we're seeing happening on the planet shows us that more and more, how it's also interconnected, and that we can find our connection to the earth and sustainability in pretty much any value that you have. And so that's kind of the angle that I wanted to bring up today, because nature also offers a lot of solutions to us, the inspiration. And so that's also pretty fun to consider. And so that's kind of where I wanted to start, and opening up. And it's actually 11 on the 11th at the 11:11. Chat when that
Always love that.
happens. Doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes it tells me they're done. But I would love to hear from both of you, if you feel like sharing it all, what resonates, what doesn't, what you're thinking about, how this is connected to you, things like that. Anything come up while I was talking? No?
I loved what you said about nature offers solutions, just that phrase, because it's like, oh my God, absolutely. That is like so central to how I view nature, because I always look to nature to really understand like the cycles that I'm going through, and understanding patience and the process, and the ebbs and flows, and the growth, and the sort of replenishment. I mean, all of those things are just so important. And it's like I'm looking out at this day today, and it's been kind of foggy. It's like kind of overcast and foggy today. And it's like every day is different. And for me, it's always a joy to open my windows and look out every day and to see what the new day is offering, because it's always different. And nature reminds me that there isn't not only the impermanence of everything and how it shifts, but that every moment there's something new to appreciate and to enjoy. And it's like, to celebrate. It's like, oh my gosh. I mean, I'm one of those people that grew up in Los Angeles, and one of the things that kind of propelled me to move forward and to live other places was that, most of the time it's sunny and warm. It's like it's sunny and warm. It's LA, it's sunny and warm. And I really wanted to experience other types of weather, because I thought that I just love weather, because weather is just powerful and it's so evocative, and it's just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So I have the opportunity to do that. And so it's like every time I see something that's different, especially other than sunny and warm and just blue skies with no clouds, I'm just like, yes, look at today. It's like, look at this. It's like, this is so great, because it's all of the diversity that nature has to offer in terms of how it shows up. And I just really, I don't know. I get so excited talking about this topic, because nature just sustains me in so many different ways. And I'm always looking to nature and when you talked about it offering solutions, there's such a simplicity to it, such a beauty to it that when I'm tapped into that, it really guides me in a powerful way.
Thank you. Yeah, it's true. I love the idea of the diversity of the soil, diversity in nature, you know.
And also the that simplicity point, because if you're under the fluorescent lights like I am now, and it there's nothing like nature or getting outside every day to just bring you back to the actual time of the day, and to just being present and just being in the moment, which I'm really trying. Because when you're under the fluorescent lights all the time, you just really lose track. I mean, for God's sakes, I work in a casino and there's no windows, there's no, it's all artificial, it's all this. And so this is my year to make sure I get outside every day, and it's really helped.
Yeah.
It just brings you to the present, which
Yeah, and that's part of the illusion that is created in Las Vegas or wherever you happen to be. That being in the casino, I used to work, and I lived in Las Vegas for about 15 years, so so I know that I worked for casinos before. So yeah, it's just that the artificiality of it. It's just like, yeah, you lose track of so much. I mean, that connection to nature is so powerful, and it's so vital for us. I mean, even when I think about the difference between how I used to experience the night skies as a child, and you would see the Milky Way, you would see so many stars. There wasn't all the light pollution and all of the things that take us away. I think people don't get a chance. Some kids never have really seen like a full canopy of stars in the sky before, because there's not opportunities to do that unless you live places where there isn't that, all of the development and the light pollution.
Right.
And it's like something that I grew up with it, and you probably did as well. It's like, it's just amazing to have that experience, and to really, it's like, because you really get a sense of the grandeur and the scale of the universe and your place in it, and just how minuscule you are, but just how powerful it is to like be here and observe it. It's like it just energetically takes you to a completely different place when you can connect with nature that way.
but it's also real. Like everything else in this stuff is just fake, and it's
Yes.
trying to create an illusion of
Yes.
lights and stars and fake sky, and it's just like brings you back to the real, which it's so easy to tell yourself these stories, or to just to lose sight of how you actually feel. But I think you actually need to get outside to be real. It's real on a couple different levels,
Grounded in that too, right? It's a grounding in the sense it grounds us in the present, like you said, and and just in the reality, in the moment of what's happening, in a way that nothing else can. But we're so disconnected from that. And
but go ahead, take it. Let me know.
oh, hi.
You can make a lot.
We get there. Are you in a coffee shop? Oh, you can't hear.
Yeah. You want to take it?
It's a little noisy, yeah.
I keep it muted.
Okay. Thank you. Glad you're here though. But I mean, to that point, I think finding time to build it into our life where it's not like, oh, I have to go on a hike today. Yes, hikes are wonderful and enjoyable, or I have to do this, or I have to recycle, while all of that is in itself what it is, I think there's so much more validity and necessity, I think is a better word, to connect to what we're talking about here. Just the influence and inspiration that comes from just being in nature, from taking the moment to go outside and feel your feet on the grass if you can, or even just breathe outside the air, look up, like you said, take a walk, and just recognize what's happening. Because I know I work a lot with the younger generation, so Gen Z in particular, and a lot of them are very disconnected from nature. Like it's just something they move through and deal with, but they didn't kind of grow up with the, go outside and play in nature experience. And what I found when I do values work with them, that sustainability and nature, those are not the words that usually come up for the younger generation. And yet we're all looking to that generation to save us from our own kind of destructive behaviors of previous generations. So what's interesting to me is that is to like think about, like you said, oh, if nature's part of being present. If I value presence, nature is in that. It's a part of it. Or I value inspiration. It's part of it because we can look towards nature for guidance. Or diversity. Nature's part of diversity. If I value diversity, because you see nature thrive in diverse environments, and you need all of that in the soils, or the soils become dead. Really, is what I've learned. There's a new move. There's a, is it the Farmer's Footprint? I can't remember what it is called. I think that's the other one. But there's a new movie about regenerative farming that's really powerful.
I saw that. It
Oh,
was
did you?
amazing. Yes.
And I really like that word regenerative. I've actually recently changed one of my values from sustainability to regenerative. And it was always a part of my definition of sustainability, but I've actually renamed it because what I was finding was I wanted to look more toward nature. So sustainability for me was not just sustain the earth, but it was be sustainable financially, sustainable energetically, like in my body, sustainable in my family and my relationships. So I was thinking about sustainability in a holistic way, but it was blocking me. It started to not really work for me anymore because it didn't have enough. It was like, be sustainable. There wasn't, it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. It wasn't moving me anywhere. And I look at the values as dynamic. They give us a path. So while it worked for a while, I had reached the edge of where it could help me and really direct me. And I had tested it along the way, but it became regenerative, because regenerative to me had this quality of rebirth. It had a quality of nourishment. It had the quality of diversity, of all these things that are necessary, of vibrancy, of being alive, which is what nature is all about. And so when we think about business from a regenerative standpoint, wow, how different that is. Not just making a sustainable business, but a regenerative business, because it gives and takes, is what it feels like to me. Or what if we live with that in our mind? So our values can certainly shift around a little bit, but it doesn't mean, it's not like I lost sustainability. Sustainability is still there. It's just embedded in a new word for me, which is now regenerative, has taken kind of the top spot, because it felt better to me. It literally was something like, oh yeah, this works for me now. I want to have a regenerative approach to my health, not just like hit a number that says I'm okay. That felt like more like sustainability. Does anyone resonate with that idea?
I'm totally loving it. I'm just like, I just want to like say congratulations on finding that juicy word, because it is so much, it really does fit. It's like, it's like, it almost generates an excitement for me, generates regenerative. It's exciting. It is. And it also involves resilience and so many other things. I mean, it's like that word. And I don't think that, in fairness, that you really changed your value, because the value is the same, but it's the definition and it's the naming of it. And we always talk about that in our program. It's like the naming of the value is so important, because it has to have it needs to have that spark of excitement, and really noticing for yourself as you over the years have looked at that and lived with it, and tried on what's important for me right now, and all the different things that you do when you do values edits and everything else. It's like, just like choosing that word to kind of supplant the one that you had before seems like such a step in that clarity that we're always talking about, the clarity that you get from taking your values out and not only test driving them, but like looking at them every day or every week or every month and saying, okay, what am I doing in support of this? What value is showing up here? So it seems like really like, that is so cool. I love that word, because it is a fantastic word. And
it also feels like more of a verb. but
Yeah.
also, you know, to regenerate, it feels like more of an action word, like you said,
Mhm.
and just the verb in there as opposed to the noun.
Mhm.
And it is going to move you. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
really a good one.
it's been a powerful kind of shift in the last couple months of seeing that. And it's a
Mhm.
word out in the world of sustainability quite a bit. They talk about regenerative farming, regenerative cotton, and it's not a new word for me, but
No.
applying it in a different way is what's new for me. So
And how have you moved or changed since you chose the word, or is it more just like a beacon?
I think it's both. It's definitely a beacon. Listen, I have a tendency to overthink and to kind of start to kind of obsess on things, and it's made that less because of the, like you were saying, it's so much action is in it, and there's action to take and there's action not to take. Like regenerative means to me, right, that you do certain things to help things regenerate, but there's also a process that I have nothing to do with. It regenerates itself by taking these actions. So it helps me let go in a way
Mhm.
that I felt
Mhm.
before was more on me to kind of make happen. And and so I think it's helped me feel better and feel more inspired and hopeful in terms of many different areas, from my own work through to the world to the family, all those kinds of things. And I can't say, okay, this one thing, but it's definitely it gave a breath of life to things that were starting to feel stale.
Mhm. Mhm. Right.
And it's but it's still the value of reverence for nature and reverence for life. It's still that, caring about people and animals and
Mhm. Mhm.
planet,
Mhm.
all, so it's still the same essence, but the word itself shifted. And you'll see when we start to Anna's going to come through the process with me to identify her values. And so when we go through that, we'll start to tease out the words that resonate for you, because they're so individual for each of us. And
Mhm.
that's what's fun
Mhm.
about it, is you can be
Mhm.
as creative as you pick the words that really work for you, or the phrase.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, because what do you, Sheila, which one is your value?
Right now, well, I shifted it. At first, it was reverence for life, and right now, it's life is sacred.
Life is
For
sacred. Yeah.
me, that encompasses that whole thing. Life is sacred. I mean, it's nature, animals, the planet. I mean, all of that, just the sacredness of it, and just as I approach it with that sacred, coming from that place, really honoring and working in concert with versus against, or really just understanding what my impact is and my personal footprint and how I leave the world a better place and what I do to make it better and to like really value all of it, all of the diversity of life. It's like that's the thing that really like excites me, about that. And as you were talking, I was thinking about the word that came to me was yield. It's like,
Mm,
you
yield.
talked about pushing against and like trying to make things happen, but there's like this, it sounds like there's this yielding that's happening. And it's like, you can look at yield in two ways. It's kind of like, okay, let me just like, when you're yielding as you're merging with traffic and you kind of like pause and pull back a little bit. I don't need to like be in the, like taking the lead here, but also what is yielded as you do that, the yield that comes from the bounty of that regenerative kind of thinking and that way of being. And it's just like so there's like this flow and this yielding that sounds like it's beginning to happen. And that's like, I mean, not that it's not been there before, but you're shaping it in a different way because of
Yeah.
choosing that word and what it does inside of you.
Yeah. Thank you for that. It reminds me too of just how to use that every day, right? In farming, they yield, like the way to do, my understanding, I'm not a farmer, disclaimer, but my understanding is you allow where you're planting to rest, right?
Mhm.
You don't plant on the same soil over and over and over again and try to infuse it with stuff to try and keep it alive. You have to give it time to regenerate. And I think in my own life, I've certainly seen it with my kids. I've certainly seen it in the world. we need that time to regenerate. I need that time to yield, to rest. And it's not that nothing's happening at all, right? Like I would imagine the soil and the time that the things aren't growing, there's a lot happening. And it's the same. It's just we can't always be on going forward without having the pause. That's one of my favorites. You know, how can we insert a pause in our day, in an hour, a pause to go outside, Anna, right? Like just a pause can shift everything in a moment. And I think the regenerative idea reminds me of that, whether in all my things. And so, you know, being at a place where my kids are now older, this is a natural turning point, a natural yield of, okay, what is next? And I kind of am I'm wanting to push right through it to get to the outcome. But you know, I can't just replant. I have to, you know, trust and pause to allow things to regenerate.
But
So,
there's also such a strong force of nature, and there's a dangerous side of nature too.
right.
And when Sheila was talking about the awe,
Yeah.
you know, the sacredness, but the awe, but that, you know, there is so much power and so much danger. And so it was kind of interesting because the combination between you two was Sheila saying the word awe and you talking about honor and yielding. I was like, I just, you know, I use this a lot, Amy, but the riptide, because that's my metaphor for life, because you get caught in these riptides, and if you, what happens if you swing, you know, try to swim against a riptide, you tire yourself out, and you can die, you can drown, you can't fight it. You have to yield, as you say. You have to have awe. You have to let nature be, and go with it. And if you have to get out 2 miles down the beach and walk back to your towel, that's fine. But it is a riptide. It is so powerful, and but there is so much danger if you go against, you know, this nature. So it is odd, is beauty, but it's fraught with peril.
Yeah,
If
I
you go,
think
you know, if you try to go against it.
it's respect too. Yeah, I think you're 100% right. Yeah, part of it, and part of it's being knowledgeable, knowing that you're in a riptide. You know, like half the time you don't know or know what to do. So that's a, you know, a really important piece of it too, because I think it can certainly feel that way in the world of the pressures that we all feel. And it's not all, and there's nothing tied in a nice bow either, you know? So even I was thinking about the plants, like, have you ever seen the plant with the flowers just like bending one way because there wasn't enough sun? Like they just reach for the sun and it creates this funny looking thing, but it's still beautiful in its own way, but it's just trying to get to more sun because it knows it's there. So it's moving that way towards more sun, and it kind of corrects itself for it. And when I first moved into this house, there was a lemon tree in the backyard, but we had an arborist come out and it actually wasn't a lemon tree. The lemon tree had been cut down. This was kind of like an off growth. So the lemons were never really good and it kind of grew, but it was kind of never really healthy. But it was fascinating because it looked like a lemon tree, but it really wasn't a healthy lemon tree. So it looked like one, it sort of could smell like one, but it really wasn't one. It had kind of grown from something that wasn't of health, you know, it was kind of cut off. So I don't know what that means, except that it isn't as black and white or good and bad like any of it. And it is have the moments of, like you said, it could be peril or nature can be destructive. It's not like all rosy.
Even excuse me, but even in the destructiveness, there's regeneration. I mean, that's part of the process.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, it's like just like the fires that have to happen for the pine cones to, like, you know, release the new seedlings and seeds. They pop in the fire, and we might call it destructive because that's our view of it versus what's actually happening, which is in the regenerative process. Like, this is how it happens. This is how it unfolds. This is the only way that it's going to happen for that plant to continue to thrive and to flourish.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, there's a, I think even in the destructiveness, if we look beyond that to see like from a larger perspective, there's there's always regeneration. I remember when many years ago when Mount St. Helens blew, and it was like that whole side of the mountain, and it was just like, oh my gosh, it was just like complete destruction. I remember visiting not long after and seeing, all the plants like off to the side, and you could see the force that explosion took. And then what happened over the course of years as that it was regenerated into something else, and how it comes back, how nature comes back in its own way, the healing
Mm.
of it, and that process that may take a long time, but there's a beauty to that, because it's like you said, it's going to find its path. These plants, these animals, everything is going to find its path back to living and to flourishing and to being, to continuing to thrive and to be present. And I think that's really gorgeous in a way.
It is so gorgeous. Yeah, really. It's such a good reminder of resilience
Mm-hmm.
whenever we go through difficult chapters, of which I've had a few. I don't know if anyone else has. Am I the only-
Oh my gosh. Absolutely.
I am here, I need this for myself as much as anything. But yeah, it's a good reminder that, like you said, don't fight the riptide. Like you couldn't stand in front of Mount St. Helens and be like, please don't blow. Okay,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then and it's hard to see it when it's happening. I mean, let's be frank. I mean, that's why I like the topic of inspiration through nature, because
Mhm.
it's the, when you're in the riptide, it freaking is terrifying. And if you're in the, anywhere near a volcano erupting or a fire, it is devastating. And
Mhm.
there's no minimizing that. And that could be literal or figurative. It could be, a part of our life as a metaphor, or it can be actual. It's devastating. Those are not like thrown around. We're not throwing those around as
Mhm.
great, fire is great.
Mhm. Mhm.
But the remembering of where we can see inspiration, and it is astounding. I was in, Idaho over in October, and we could see where there had been fire, and there were still some trees that had black on them, but there was so much life there. And there is something about my own humanity of like of appreciating that, like looking for those moments, looking for the life where there had been fire,
Mhm.
seeing how close the fire had come
Mhm.
up the creek, you know, knowing it was there. And yet it was so beautiful what had come back. And it was
Mhm.
still blackened, and it was still next to kind of the beautiful new growth.
Mhm.
They're both
Mhm.
there. And we can't stop it, you know. I mean, I think they try to throw a lot of chemicals on it, but that's different. That's different issues. But I do think this conversation is important as we talk about Earth Month too, because there's so much talk about climate change and crisis and the numbers and reducing carbon, and all of that is super important. And I also think it's really important for us to connect to this conversation, to recognize how it impacts pretty much all of our values in some way. I think
Mhm.
of your value of grow and flourish too, or invite beauty and creativity.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, and it is so important to continue to focus on that. When you were saying Earth Month, I mean, I was just reminded of, the times in my life when just a simple act or gesture, it's like, oh, I got another plastic fork from this takeout place and it was in my bag, and what do I do with it? And it's like those kind of things. I mean, it's like it really hits me in a way, because I don't want to be part of the problem, but I know that I am, you
Right.
know, I am. And I can also keep moving toward being part of the solution. But I know that just my very existence is having an impact, right? Sometimes a negative impact on the planet. And all of these, in all of these ways, it's like, you recycle, and then it's like, well, they want you to like have clean recycle, so now you got to use water to like clean the recycle. And it's like, I'm always aware of that when it's happening. I mean, these are like the fundamental things. It's like, I want to clean this out so it can be recycled, but at the same time I'm using water to do that. So it's like, for me, there's always a little bit of discomfort around how much I can do and how much I'm doing, and an awareness around it. And just kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of like trying to make a little bit of peace with, okay, let's just do the best that you can today. Okay, let's be aware of that. Okay, next time you order from that place, put a little note on the app and say no utensils, or what, just do little things. Or just like, if I catch it, just like put it back, that make it easier, that I feel like, okay, so I'm taking my little steps. They're not big steps. They're not massive steps, but they're tiny steps. But when that's multiplied by many people, that's where it can have the impact. That's why, even though some people say, well, I don't recycle anymore because I heard that, it just all goes somewhere and this is like a big sham. And, I'm still going to do it. It's like, this is like, I mean, that's a decision that I make because life is sacred, right? This is a decision that I'm going to make because of grow and flourish, because I want the planet to continue to grow and for all of us to flourish. So I'm going to take these steps,
Right.
mindfully, being aware that I can't account for what's going to happen outside of the realm of my own actions and control, but I can certainly take those actions in good consciousness and continue to kind of do the things that are going to feel like I'm supporting the planet and being a steward, and inviting in regeneration and sustainability wherever I can.
Absolutely. Beautifully said. And that is the point. It's not to get perfectionistic paralysis around this stuff. Like, there's some kind of a mark that we're supposed to hit. Now, that's different for the companies. They have an obligation to do that. And recently, I don't know if you heard this, but a group of older women sued the government in, was it Norway? And they won, that it was the government's responsibility to take care of that climate change is the government's responsibility because it's harming their health. And it's a kind of a landmark decision that I have to get more information on, because I just saw a quick headline. But I did read that it was a group of women who came together and sued their government. And
Wow.
we're hearing bits of that regarding
Wow.
our health and our well-being, and that it is their responsibility to protect us. So I think, these issues are, how to solve them are both simple and complex at the same time, because there's so many variables, and we can't minimize that, but we can certainly have conversations about it. And like you're saying, support each other in, okay, this isn't great, but what can we do? Where can we make a difference? Our awareness is huge. There's been times where people weren't even aware. So when I started working in sustainable fashion over a decade ago, and people are like, there's no problem in fashion. What are you talking about? And there's a huge problem in multiple levels with things. And they're taking concrete actions to change that. Some brands and companies on their own, but a lot of them now, there are governmental policies that are forcing that issue, primarily in Europe, but the States here too.
Yeah, and it just reminds me of the power of taking action, and how, I mean, who knows how that began for those women to like just
Right.
have this conversation and say, you know what, we really need to do something about that, and say, okay, I'm with you on that, and let's see what we can do, and let's get let's get an attorney involved, or let's like fight, and to actually do that. I mean, that's like that's like it's such a wonderful example of taking your power and doing what you can to make a change. And it
Right.
just reminds me of how much more I can be doing in different ways to do that, because it is about having a
Right.
conversation and making a plan and deciding this is something important and pursuing it and saying, I want to be the voice for this. I want to let people know. I want, I want the opportunity to see if I can make a difference here. That's so
Right.
powerful.
Yeah, and I think I think it's super powerful. And I think what I was also wanting to explore today, which we've been doing, is this idea that it doesn't even have to be the passion for sustainability or the climate crisis. It can be community that drives the change. It can be your value and passion um for community, for well-being and health, for, there's so many other things that resonate, integrity to some extent, not being lied to. So you can come into the conversation around it without it having to be driven by sustainability only.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I think that's an important avenue as we kind of continue to evolve as a culture and as a
Mhm.
people, you know.
Mhm. That's that integration of the values, and it's also the reason why you have the 5 to 7 core values, because there is that breadth to having that many, because it's like it's when you were talking, it's like almost like entering doors. It's like whatever door you enter through, whether
Yes.
it's through the door of integrity, it's the door of sustainability, it's the door of community, whatever that is, you're arriving at the same place, because this is something that's really important. This is a core value of mine, and I want to live from that place. So I'm going to take those actions and do those things that support that are aligned with that. And that's like, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
What do you mean? What do you mean by no matter what door you go in, you arrive at the same place?
Oh, so what Amy was saying was that, if sustainability is not like listed as one of your core values, it doesn't mean that you're not involved in sustainability, or that's not something that's important to you, or you can't have a voice or decide that you want to do something about climate change or the problem of climate change, because these women may have entered that door through their community involvement and having conversations. It might have been like, we want to do something to, this is, or for health reasons, or for whatever it might be, because integrity, like you said, like the government's lying to us, so we want to get to the truth of this. So you might approach it from like whatever your core values are, but then you're in the same arena of like, I want to make this change happen, so I'm going to do something actively, and I'm going to engage with other people, and I'm going to gather up these resources and this support for something that I think is really important. I might have come to it through my sense of
I
life
see.
is sacred or integrity. Yeah.
Yeah. That each value in itself is a doorway into
Mhm.
your, caring for the planet in some way.
Mhm. Mhm.
And you get to find your doorway that works.
Right. Yes. Yes.
That's what's powerful. So even if it's, um, caring for the future generations, like that idea too, that can fall into it. Whereas it doesn't have to be love of nature or sustainability.
Mhm. Mhm. And I think the important thing about that too, Amy, because one of the things we talk about is when you're actually naming your own values, it's a very personal thing, and it's having those values that are aligned, but there's all these values that are the back of that are like also connected to that particular value that you name. So for me, life is sacred has many values that are attached to that. And so if I say, this is my value, life is sacred, and you say my value is something else, we may find that we actually have the same sense of how important that is, or what that means, or how that, if you get into the definition, it becomes much more similar. So there's much more similarity than difference, even though we may call it something different because it resonates with us. The actual value itself is going to lead us to the same place and the same understanding. So it's kind of really, it's wonderful, especially in the groups, to really see how people describe their values and name them, because there can be like, it seems like, oh, that's really different. But when you look further, there's like so much more in common, and there's so much more similarity at play that it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I get that. Cause this is, yeah, this is like my value of this.
Yeah. And it's another bridge in that way.
It
Bridge.
is absolutely a bridge. Yeah, that's great. It is really a bridge. Yes.
Were you going to say something, Anna?
No, I just wanted to say thank you. That really cleared it up.
Oh, good. Yeah. Because it is powerful going through the process, because once we're clear about it, our values, ourselves, then it just kind of enables other conversations to happen without the stickiness of not being, of the vagueness of not really sure where we fall onto it, or well, we're like the shoulds creep in when we're not clear. I should be, we find that a lot in the workshops in the beginning. People are like, oh, I better put world peace as the value because that's the right value to have, and it's not that world peace isn't really important or something that's important to us, but that's not what we're doing here. We're not trying to create a list of things to make you a good person. That's
Yeah.
the idea is you already are a person of value and worth and good. And let's help bring out what those things are that help remind you of that when you forget.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, that light you up. But I also love that both of you have had some change in your words and your values, and you both brought that up today, and that's really interesting that they evolve.
Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, they do. And I encourage people not to change them too much in the beginning, because it's really establishing them. And I think what we were saying too is that the value itself doesn't change a whole lot, the meaning, but the word that I use to connect to it does. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. Yeah, and the other thing that does too, I mean, just I'm glad that we're having this conversation too, because a lot of times people might be a little bit reluctant to commit to what the value is, and we've had that experience as well. It's like, well, I'm not quite sure that that's it, and they're kind of like, on the fence about it. And it's like, hey, you're living these values, so it's like as you are going through over time, you're going to refine them. You're going to refine them in a way that is meaningful for you. And it's okay to say, for now, these are what the values are, and recognizing that there's going to be an evolution that happens internally and for you. And at some point, it may look a little bit different, or you may describe them differently, or actually use different words and phrases. The point is to like say, I'm going to live with these values for a while, as Amy was saying, just to like get really accustomed to, is this the right value? How does it feel every time I use this value? Does it inspire me? Does it move me forward? Does it like spark something within me? And if it doesn't, then it's time to like then go in and like, kind of like redefine and reassess. Okay, well, maybe there's a different word or phrase that I can use that gives me that feeling. Because the whole power of having the values and using them to live from is that they spark something in you. And it's like you don't have to like go back to like, oh my God, what are they? I said, let's see, it's this is, and then it's something that is living and breathing inside of you. And so it's like you can like call up your values right away and have a sense of, this is what I'm operating with, and this still feels good, and this still feels aligned, and this still feels right, because it really is about how it resonates and how it feels internally. And when you have that match, it's magic, because it's like, oh yeah, I feel really clear about this. And then I know anytime somebody bumps up against that value, or something that I do, or whatever happens, I'm in an experience that doesn't feel aligned with that, I'm going to have a visceral kind of reaction to it. And that's going to be my cue that I need to look at that value. I need to look at what's happening that may be misaligned with that value.
I've also found, just to add on to that, is that the reverse is true too, that sometimes without the clarity, we can think we're outside of our values and be beating ourselves up over things, when in actuality, we are in alignment. We've just been skewed in how we're thinking about it. And so sometimes it can go, the alignment is there, but we're not clear that it's there, or how it's there, or there's a timing thing. So I think it was beautifully said. And we talk about that all the time, that what it feels like to be in alignment and out of alignment. And I wanted to say, that sometimes we think we're out of alignment and we actually are more in alignment than we realize. And there's something really validating about acknowledging that.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
when we are out of alignment, it's not like, oh, you're bad and you have to go sit, in a timeout. We know because we're not feeling good. So,
Yeah. There's no judgment. It's just really awareness. It's
yeah,
like when you have that awareness, it's like, oh, there's an opportunity. It's like, and your feelings can really guide you in that way, though it's not the only thing. It can certainly guide you in that direction, because when you're feeling a level of discomfort, it might be because you've got the right value, but you are out of alignment with it, or it might be that you need to kind of reassess
right.
whatever's happening. Maybe you've taken that value, and we talk about that too, when you take the values to an extreme, or you lead with one, and this one is like your major value that you're constantly leading with, and you've got these other values that are kind of sitting there, and it's like, if you look at some of the other values, it might be that you actually are in alignment with those values, and this one that you're leading with and that you're really familiar with, it's like it's the strongest one, is predominating in a way that at this point maybe it needn't be, because it's like steering you in a direction you don't want to go. So that's that's why we do this every month. Yeah, living your values, right? Because it really is an everyday process, because it's constantly just kind of gauging, where you are on that journey, on that path, and making sure that you come back and you're aligned again. You're back on the right path.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Yeah. And when it's all kind of swimming along too, that's when I call them like advisory boards. Like your values are your advisory board, because when they're really solid, you can go to them with pretty much anything,
Yes.
and they'll have a clear answer for you. And that's not usually how people talk about values. Usually it's something like you're supposed to live up to them to be something, a better person, but that's not the framework we use to do here at all. Which is why it takes a little conversation.
I appreciate you guys so much. I have to sign off, but I really appreciate you, and thank you for all your insight.
Oh,
Thanks.
absolutely. And
Take care.
enjoyed
Bye-bye.
having you.
Thanks
Thank you.
All right.
I think this is about time to wrap up.
Yeah, I think it is. What another great conversation.
Always,
On our
always.
11/11.
Yes, yes,
See you
yes.
next time.
Yeah, super excited about it. Yes, absolutely. Look forward to seeing everyone the next time.
Next month.
Yep, 11/11.
Be here.